Now let's take a closer look at the possible ripple effects of President Zuma's controversial move. I'm joined by Chitra Nobat in New York and Sumita Naidu in Johannesburg. And Chitra, I'd actually like to start with you. Now, it seems the world was just as surprised as South Africa with Zuma's decision. Of course, markets respected Nene's fiscal discipline, and we saw the rand plunge as a result. Now, how much has this impacted foreign investor sentiment around the country and around the world as well?
Many investors are viewing this negatively. Analysts like Citi say that there's a perceived loss of institutional strength and an increased risk of more spending in upcoming budgets. Citi believes that this will have knock-on effects, and the S&P may downgrade ratings next June. Even as it relates to currency returns, experts say it would be naive to think that they may not face a credit rating downgrade because of a few reasons. One is foreign selling pressure. And secondly, a weaker South African rand supports the stagflation that companies have been operating under for years. So investors will be scrutinizing what the new finance minister and president do next.
And Sumitra, I mean, of course, grave concerns, as we hear from Chitra, at this point, as a plunging rand now points to rising inflation. And of course, the risks to GDP growth are much stronger now. Now, how do you see this impacting the Reserve Bank's next move? I think that will be in February.
Yes, well, the Reserve Bank has been quiet thus far. Previously, when I had spoken to the Reserve Bank governor, at that point, the rand was trading at over 13 rand against the dollar. And I asked him about possible intervention, and he said that the bank will not intervene. It tried previously in the 90s, and it didn't work out as planned. He added that the Reserve Bank has always maintained that it won't interfere in the currency. It's free floating, but it will monitor it closely in case of inflation. Of course, this decline in the rand is unprecedented. One would have thought that it would have prompted some sort of action or at least a statement from the Reserve Bank. What economists are saying now is that this weakness will no doubt filter into inflation, which is already heading towards that 6% ceiling, and that it will not only make a strong case for higher interest rates, but more aggressive hikes. So the bank may be forced to push rates by at least 200 basis points even.
And Chitra, in terms of the outlook for the rand, now some analysts say that most African currencies are likely to be hit hard if we see the US Fed hiking its rate. Now, what are the prospects of a hike at this point?
Most investors and analysts expect and are prepared for an interest rate hike. U.S. Central Bank Chair Janet Yellen and other Fed officials have been giving speeches recently throughout the United States at economic forums. And from everything they're saying, experts conclude that this rate hike will happen. Janet Yellen has recently reiterated that to normalize interest rates, any decisions will be based on the data, and that data points to a modest path of rate hikes. And the key metrics around this are employment, economic growth, inflation. Recent jobs and GDP data has shown growth and improvement. Unemployment is hovering around 5%, and inflation is under the target at 2%. So many feel the U.S. Central Bank must raise interest rates to show confidence in the U.S. economy and in the outlook of the economy. And so the expectation is for a rate hike.
Well, I'd like to actually keep both of you on the line as we sample some of the reactions following ex-finance minister Lala Nene's abrupt sacking.
Obviously, the issue of appointment and removal of cabinet ministers is the prerogative of the president. This was not discussed at cabinet. The cabinet took place on Wednesday. So at the conclusion of the cabinet meeting, there was no new minister of finance, Minister Van Rooyen. So there was no way that would have predicted, because we are not sangomas.
We all know that we serve at the behest of the president. And I don't know why you select Minister Radebe and say, is he not scared of his job? What about me? All of us are serving as, only when the president is willing for us to serve. If he wants to call me now and say he wants to remove me, it can happen.
Now, Sumitra, I mean, just looking at that, and evidently Zuma's decision has sparked a call for broader civil action as the South African Republic or the public show their discontent with his actions. Now, some are calling for a tax revolt. Has there been any action to push this forward?
Yeah, so Chair, well, you know, there's just been so much of talk in the last 2 days. A lot of people taking to social media, expressing their anger, their anguish, their disdain for what's happening, writing open letters to newspapers. And of course, there has been this talk as well. We've had organizations come out and warn of a possible tax revolt. Of course, you're unable to see that right now until you actually have people that make a decision to stop paying their taxes. So you won't see that now. But we haven't really seen any organized move to get people to stop paying their taxes. But you know, we've seen lots of organizations coming out saying that, you know, we should march, we should do something. The Zuma must fall hashtag has been trending on Twitter in the last day. So there's been a lot of movement on the ground. There's been a lot of talk on the ground, but we're not actually seeing anything concrete coming through. There was a petition that went around that managed to garner about 50,000 signatures, a petition to have to oust the President Jacob Zuma. And we do know that one organization has called for a march next week on the 16th of December, which is a public holiday. So they're really calling on South Africans to do something. If they're unhappy, take to the streets and march to get the president out, basically.
Well, thank you so much, both of you, for those insights. Unfortunately, we'll have to leave it there. Chitra Nobat in New York and, of course, Sumitra Naidu in Johannesburg.